It's no secret that I'm highly critical of the Catholic Church, so if you're a supporter, I'd recommend clicking off now or get your comments out of the way below so I have something to laugh at tomorrow morning while I drink my breakfast coffee. When I was talking about why the devil isn't scary a couple of months back, we got that comment section up to over 100 comments, so I'd love to see that happen again. Question for you: what possession cases do you consider lesser known? Let me know in the comments, and let's get into it before I tempt fate anymore. We all know that demonic spirits like to communicate through Ouija boards, but did you know that they've also figured out how to text to get their message across? Back in 2014, Father Marian Rachel from Yaroslav, Poland, claimed to have received several digital missives from the Prince of Darkness after performing a failed exorcism on a high school-aged girl. The Austrian Times reported that the girl's soul remained possessed by a demon, so it's pretty legit. According to the holy man, the author of these texts is an evil spirit who has possessed her soul, adding, often the owners of mobile phones are not even aware that they are being used like this. However, in this case, it is clear. He referred local news reporters to one of Satan's texts that read, "She will not come out of hell. She's mine. Anyone who prays for her will die." After the father replied, Beelzebub took his turn and said, "Shut up, preacher. You cannot save yourself, idiot, you pathetic old preacher." According to the priest, clearly this young girl has been possessed and needs further help. It's not known whether the beasts also use WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger, or Twitter. Seriously though, if God works in mysterious ways, demons work in really lazy ones. I guess work smarter, not harder, but I hope my texts don't get hacked. Does anyone else know about Canada's first ever case of possession? This is an event that dates back to the 1600s. Leading figures in Quebec City during the 1660s, to be specific, suspected an alleged witch, Danielle Voile, of employing diabolical arts to induce a demon to possess Barbe Halai, a young girl working at a manor house in nearby Beauport. Both the witch and the family of the girl had recently arrived in Quebec at the time, and the tiny village had fewer than 800 people. And when strange things started to happen to the family, people were a little thrown off. How strange, you might ask? People recorded details about them that we don't have for other people in what was known as New France. The French colonists treated this particular case of demon possession in the ways familiar to them from their country of origin. They appear to have assumed the demon itself matched the demons of Catholic tradition. Now, this poor girl continued to experience the symptoms of demonic possession for months after the alleged witch was executed, apparently on the orders of Bishop François de Laval. Sadly, the court details of the crime and sentencing have been lost, but we can assume. Historians have noted that the end of the ordeal came in the form of an exorcism, or what sounds very much like one, conducted by a layperson using a rib bone believed to belong to the deceased Jean de Brébeuf. Saint Jean de Brébeuf was a French missionary who was captured and killed in 1649, by the way. To quote the history texts, we have a laywoman who would normally not be permitted to perform an exorcism, in fact performing an exorcism in all but name. Experts consider this an example of the cultural compromises that the frightened colonists felt they had to make. These colonists were pretty few in number, and were cut off from France for most of the year, and were kind of in trouble. They needed support from a king, who might turn his attention away from them at any moment, towards folks that were just generating more income. And also, they needed help from indigenous allies, who they didn't always respect. Not good to offend those that you need help from. If you're looking for the records, experts have quoted sources including the memoir of a local aristocrat, the personal correspondence of a nun living in the town's convent, the biography of another nun who spent a year attempting nightly exorcisms, and the daily records of nearby priests. These accounts shed light on how town authorities attempted to deal with this affliction, which included horrifying visions, violent outbursts, all usual demon stuff if you ask me. Has anyone ever heard of the International Association of Exorcists? So it's an organization that was founded in 1990 by 6 priests, including the world-famous exorcist of Rome, Father Gabriel Amorth, and Father Jeremy Davies. Its statutes were approved by the Roman Catholic Church on June 13th of 2014, and this organization provides training and support to exorcists and also helps to raise awareness of the issue of demonic possession. It has around 250 members from 30 countries, and all those members are priests who have been authorized by their bishops to perform exorcisms. The organization is composed of mostly Catholic priests, but there are a couple of Anglicans and Orthodox folks, so need a little bit of variety. The association recently published a Mexican Catholic priest's report of a significant increase in the extraordinary action of the devil. Devotees who seek miracles have been victims of numerous cases of oppression, obsession, and demonic possession, according to the Reverend Andres Lopez, who is a member of the College of Exorcists of the Primacil Archdiocese of Mexico. He described the skeletal Santa Muerte, also known as Holy Death, or the Angel of Death, as a growing cult or sect that is a fusion of Brazilian Quimbanda, Cuban Santeria, and occult Satanism. He's also associated it with organized crime such as robberies and narco selling. So overall just a bad time for folks who live in that area. Okay, here's a doozy of a case. In summer of 2013, 25-year-old John Jenkin from Cumbria, England, expressed fears that he would kill his mother. While in his deranged state, he approached a random van driver, put his hands in the air in a surrender motion and cried out, "I am armed, but it's not in my hands." Desperate to avoid committing such an atrocity, he tried to end his life by downing a cocktail of whiskey, painkillers, LSD, and attempting to end himself in a river. He was discovered later that day, unstable, and smeared with his own red fluids after self-inflicting. After these events, he was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, where the staff was like, "Yeah, you're low risk." And they're like, "Get out of here, pal." I'm no expert, but I'd hate to see high risk if that's considered minimal. Later that evening, he confessed to a group of friends that he was possessed by demons, saying, "I am the devil, I need to confess." He said his mother had become aggressive and controlling after the events of that day, and that same night his sister Katie had confided to one of her own friends that she was pretty worried about her brother, saying, like, "It doesn't look like him, doesn't seem like him, something's off." The next morning, after a brutal argument with his mother and sister, this guy went downstairs and hit his mother with lots of blows to her head with the sharp end of an axe, and when his sister came downstairs, he attacked her as well to stop her from screaming. Guess the sister was sadly right to be worried. After the killings, Jenkins was found stark nude, crouched behind a bench, acting erratically. Well, more erratically. When a police officer asked him if he had taken anything, he was like, "Lives." A court has sentenced him to a minimum of only 12 years in prison, which doesn't feel like enough. Alrighty, we're ending today with a personal favorite tale that I think needs to be talked about more, the case of the black lace veil. Now, while I obviously love the idea of a cute gothy aesthetic, this is anything but. After one of his public lectures, Ed Warren, the man we all know to love or hate, was conversing with a couple that had been in the audience, where a boy introduced himself as Alan and explained that he'd brought his girlfriend Lonnie to the lecture because he suspected that she'd been overtaken by some sort of occult influence. He explained that when his girlfriend became angry, her features would change into something resembling a wolf, and then the voice of a different person would speak from inside of her. Now, when Ed's wife Lorraine walked over to the group, Lonnie experienced an episode of instantaneous possession and lurched out in an attempt to attack Lorraine. This incident terrified everybody in the vicinity, with the Warrens ending the audience chat session immediately, and Ed was like, "Okay, let's get you folks out of here so we can deal with this privately." And Lorraine stayed outside because she's like, "I'm gonna take a minute." In the backstage room, the girl was fully under possession, breathing heavily, and her facial features had transformed into the wolf-like appearance the boy had talked about. After about 10 minutes, the possession passed, and Lonnie was lucid enough to explain dealing with memory loss, along with losing hours and days of her life over the last couple of months, which is a symptom common in possession. She went on to share her background, that she was a girl wealthy enough to buy whatever she wanted, but money can't buy love. Originally, her now boyfriend Alan had refused all of her advances and bribery attempts at becoming hers, so she resorted to visiting a store prominent in selling books to help with witchcraft, and bought a book on black arts. And she performed a ritual to get a lover. This ritual involved, you guessed it, the black lace veil, on top of which she placed a crown of goat horns before renouncing God in her baptism, along with swearing allegiance to Satan, and finalizing the ritual by washing down the vow with a cup of animal life source. Simple stuff you can get at the grocery store. About a month after Lonnie performed the ritual, Alan began paying her the attention she craved, making her little world perfect. But what she hadn't counted on was that she was in debt to the demonic. She gave them permission to enter her life. Ed knew right away, crap, Lonnie's gonna have to undergo an exorcism. So he made contact with a priest the next morning, who was able to come and assist. Upon arrival, the priest just wanted to make sure, so he instructed Lonnie to close her eyes and slowly count to 20, while his assistant stood behind her and placed a cross behind her head. The entity possessing the girl suddenly went wild, screaming, "Take it away, it burns, take it away," like she was freaking out during the entire exorcism, kept screaming, she's mine, her soul is mine." The spirit was eventually separated from Lonnie, but just before it departed, it vowed it would return to another. The Warrens gathered up everything, the veil, the conjuring book, all the paraphernalia, and brought it home. But I'm not done yet. Video's not over here. Later on, as time goes on, Ed receives a phone call from a man named John Rand, who's like, "Hey, can you meet my daughter? She has a natural knowledge of what he took to be witchcraft," and he was a little concerned. When she stared at people, even when they weren't aware of it, she'd fill their mind with inhuman terror. John called Ed because, well, Charlene was manifesting different personalities, some male, some female, some that could even be called human, but all making extremely threatening statements to John and his wife. He had already brought Charlene to various doctors, clergymen, and they were all like, "Talk to Ed. Ed can fix your problems." So Ed's like, "Okay." come on over, let's see what we can do. So when he met Charlene, he went to go shake her hand, and she backed away and stared distrustfully at him, keeping track of every move he made. His attempts to question her resulted in no-end answers, and her eyes began to wander about the room in boredom. When they landed on the black veil in the corner, Charlene jumped up, grabbed it, and clutched it to her chest. Her features immediately began to transform into those of a wild, sneering creature, distinct from this otherwise pretty girl. Ed drew 2 vials of water to himself, one unblessed, the other blessed by an exorcist, and moved away from what was no longer Charlene, but an inhuman spirit, a lesser devil of hell. Horrid moaning and various animal sounds came from the girl as Ed blessed her, banishing the demon away for now a second time. Yeah, those items have been locked up ever since, and I don't ever want to see them back in this world. And that's it from me once again, folks. I've been Alexa, your resident nookie spooky girly, and if you enjoyed my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more demonic goodies from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.